12:05. So that means it is game time. So if you're not here, you're missing out on the splash zone. So first off, thank you all for coming. My name is Dan Newman, and I am the founder of Learn to Scale. My email is up there, so if you hate this or love this, you can email me. I will also be sharing that at the end of the presentation when you might have a better judgment on whether you hate me or love me. My background is I've worked for over 15 years helping individuals and teams communicate. I've worked in schools, I've worked in tech companies, I've worked with agencies, I've worked with big tech companies, small tech companies, I've worked with all different types. And it often comes down to communication. So I've got a lot of kind of hacks, insights, and plenty of books on my bookshelf to talk about communication. But today we're going to be talking about two specific techniques. And Learn to Scale, I started Learn to Scale because I want small businesses to be great places to work and to grow into great places to work. That's my why. Like, that's why I do this. That's why I love it. That's why I want you all to hopefully have a blast, is that wherever you work, I want it to be a great place to work. I think everyone should have a great place to work. And if you're not at somewhere yet, then I hope that you can take these skills and techniques to make wherever you end up a great place to work. But thank you all for being here. What's in it for you? So I like to be really explicit when I do trainings and workshops, is really showcase why you should care. Why should you pay more attention to this than answering that email? Well, number one, if you are at an agency or want to be at an agency, your agency depends on being able to effectively communicate with your customers on a regular basis. This is applicable to any organization. Hey, Laura, welcome. Nice to see you. And so your ability to communicate, it has a direct impact on client satisfaction and trust. Full stop. And when you look at small teams, whether you are a small team in a big organization or your organization is just simply a small team, that communication culture, it can either enable or it can suffocate everyone's ability to do great work. If the left hand doesn't talk to the right hand is going to have pretty poor, results. So in today's competitive marketplace, having effective communication is necessary to simply survive. It is so easy for a competitor to eat your lunch if you aren't talking to your team effectively. So that's what's in it for you. And one way to kind of like get us started is I actually have a poll. I want to find out what you think bad communication looks and smells like. So I am using this tool called Slido. It's a fun little engagement tool. You can either take a picture of that QR code, or you can go to slido.com and put in the number 3618073, and you can contribute directly to this slide. And what I want you to contribute is just describe the crap out of bad communication. Oh, yes, that number. That's the number. Very good. But the question, you can answer the question with, what does bad communication look like? How does it feel like? Is it back channel conversations? Is it lack of clarity? Is it confusion? I want to hear your descriptions. So drop it right in there. Silos and pettiness. Yep, thank you. Assumptive, not direct. The president-elect's tweeting might be a symbol of bad communication, or good communication with bad intentions. Dun, dun, dun. Passive aggressiveness, lack of sharing vital details. Yeah, come on, give me more. Give me more. You can contribute as many times as you want. We're making a big word cloud. Yeah, there we go. So we got more silos. Come on, what else? Bad communication. Thinking about the impact of bad communication. Have you ever been caught with your, metaphorical pants down because someone didn't tell you something important? I was just talking to my wife. She was venting about a colleague basically chewed her out for her not talking to him, and she didn't know she needed to talk to him. So is it his fault? Is it her fault? Breakdown in communication. All right, whoa. Gaslighting, opaque, too many internal communication. Gaslighting, that's a big one. Ignoring too many back and forth emails. I have been in so many long email chains, so I feel the pain. Calling people out in meetings. Yikes. Talk about psychological safety. time wasting, unclear, vague. Yeah, this stuff stinks. And gaslighting's the biggest. So that might be a common theme. This feeling of, not understanding and being tricked, incepting false ideas. Reply all when unnecessary. I thought I moved past the reply all phase of business. You think that, in today's modern society, people understand the proper communication channels? Nah. Gives me hope that there's always going to be business out there for me because I've seen reply all chains that are pretty gross. Okay. So think of this. This is the problem. This is the thing that we want to focus on changing, in that you can be an agent of change. But also, these are the kinds of behaviors to start to look for, to notice, is that if you see a reply all, you ask yourself, why might we be having a communication problem here? Okay. Reply all is alive and kicking at New Globe. Sorry, Allison. Okay. So I want you to all to feel normalized, not only from just who's here in this room, but also, I know. I'm going to mute you for a second, Miriam. Sorry. So you're not all alone, because I went out this past summer and I went out and interviewed 50 plus marketing agency professionals, people who are at agencies, who worked at agencies, who said, screw agencies, I want to be at an agency, all these different types of groups of people. And I asked them about what they saw as problems. Very similar to that word cloud, but a little bit more verbose, a little bit more in depth. And out of those conversations, it took all that research, boiled it down into 4 key categories: business and strategy, leadership and management, operations and scaling, and communication and culture. And if you would like the link to kind of look at this in more detail, I'm dropping it in the chat. And this is what I found was basically a lot of marketing agencies, they all taste like chicken. They all kind of have different flavors of these types of problems. And when you think about the organization you're at, it probably has some types of problems that fall into these big buckets. So James said, wouldn't this apply to comms people inside companies as well as agencies? Absolutely. It is not only agencies that fail to have open and transparent communication. It's not only agencies that have difficulty acquiring and retaining top talent. But when you look at how it shows up uniquely in agencies, I mean, this is one of the killers. Is if you're a small organization and you can't, yeah, right. Allison knows. I've known Allison in like the HR circles. We've been to many an HR meetup together, and she knows that these are common types of problems that show up at any organization. So you could download that research plus a nice little kind of like breakdown of different types of agency leaders that I found. So let's get into some real practical, specific things, because you're here not only to be told communication can suck, but how can you fix it? So I've got 2 easy communication rituals I'm going to go through, and we're going to talk a little bit about it. We're going to actually have a little interview here about some of these rituals. And then I'm going to also go another layer deeper to talk about how to take these rituals and make them really specific to being at an agency. Okay. So first technique, it's called a pre-mortem. And a pre-mortem is a proactive strategy. You do it before the problems to prevent those communication breakdowns. And it's collaborative. It brings in all the right players. And it really boils down to answering this one question. Imagine we had a crystal ball that looks 6 months ahead, and this project / campaign / whatever has completely failed. What could have caused that failure? Simple question, right? But by doing this before something has started, before you've gone into action, you really get a chance to involve lots of different types of people and really explore lots of ways that this thing could go off the rails. And by identifying in advance, you can take steps to prevent it. So, like I said, full impact workshop, we're going to play. Imagine, and this is the same Slido link, this is the same QR code, same code. Imagine you are planning a farewell party at a nearby pub or bar for a longtime colleague. What could go wrong? In Slido, start brainstorming. What are the things that could go wrong with this event? Let's see what you can come up with. Farewell party, nearby pub, long-term colleague. I mean, what could go wrong? Could be emotions. Yep. Work fraternization. People mix up the venue names. No parking. Ooh, that's a good one. Especially if your organization drives. That's a really that's a risk. Is like, oh, what am I supposed to do? Like, am I supposed to, someone stiffing on the bill? Great. Mistake in the invite. Yeah, you got to make sure it's the right invite. Shocker, didn't know that the colleague was leaving. That could be something that goes wrong. What else could go wrong with this event? Come on, be creative. Like, I give you full on permission to imagine 2 weeks later, we've done this farewell party, and boy, did it go wrong. We are never doing this again. Why? Why are we never doing this again? Over drinking. Yeah, that's a pain point. And what if it's the VIP that decides to get a little too extra sauce? Um, the environment, too many people drinking too much. Yep. Uh, if your company doesn't have HR, maybe you've discovered you do need HR after shenanigans happened. Yep. Weird leader direct report dynamics for sure, especially if you have leaders that haven't had a lot of training on executive presence in these social situations. They might be the ones who are over drinking, and that could go south. Yep. You might hear some banter about the people, the policies, the company. And if this is a farewell party, yikes. I mean, maybe this is a chance for the guy to really blow the top off of all the things he hated or she hated. Spilling company secrets. You could really imagine a new hire. This is like their first social event. All these different types of things could go wrong. Nobody shows up. The forced social things. These are all things that could go wrong for sure. And now that we have this laundry list of things that can go wrong, if we are the party planners, we can actually take some proactive steps to try and maybe preemptively address some of these. So, identifying things about people mixing up the venue names is double checking. Hey, is this how the venue is called? Is there parking nearby? And I didn't see it in here, but I've definitely organized events where I showed up and I realized they're already booked or the place is closed on that day. You assumed it was open. Awkward. So calling ahead, making a reservation, maybe setting a minimum, doing those types of preemptive things with the venue. It could be talking with team members, especially maybe newer team members about the event and helping them prepare. It could be talking to a leader about how to show up at this event. You could talk about, what's the right dress code? Are we doing gifts? I mean, do you want to set up a situation where half the company shows up with gifts for the person, half the company shows up with an axe to grind and just complains about them? How can you create that environment? And by identifying it in advance with this pre-mortem, hopefully you keep things from going off the rails. So that's technique number one. Great. Now let's talk about technique number two. Technique number two is the retrospective. And this is afterwards. It's a reflection. It's after that pub party. And it's a reflective strategy, and it identifies communication breakdowns. And by setting kind of a culture where it's a recurring ritual throughout the business, and you're continually relying on reinforcing psychological safety, it can really open up the door for feedback that typically may not be shared because people are afraid of being the bad guy or being the person with the bad news. And a retrospective does not need to be complicated. It could be really simple. And it could be simple by simply asking, what went well? What didn't go so well? And what should we change? You don't have to over-engineer it. And it doesn't need to be a laundry list of every single thing. And it does not need to promise tons of fixes and everything else. So instead of me telling you how a retrospective should go, instead, I invited Stephanie here to come and talk about how retrospectives actually have gone at her agency. So I am bringing Stephanie to the table here. Hi, Steph. I'm so excited that you're here.
Hi, Dan. Thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. So, as a little backstory for everyone else, Covalent Bonds, they're a marketing agency, supports leading life science and technology marketers. And Covalent Bonds empowers these organizations with data-driven, measurable marketing, communications, and media programs. And Stephanie here is the strategic marketing manager. And I have had the pleasure of getting to know Stephanie over the past year, basically now. And we've been running retrospectives at the organization. And I figured, why not bring her down and actually say what it's like and how it goes. So, Steph, you're the star now. Um,
Mhm.
I'm just the guy on the side.
Mm.
Can you just tell me a little bit about what communication was like at Covalent Bonds before introducing retrospectives?
All right. The change that we have um, right now is very, very, important. Now that we have these spaces just to talk about, the different things that are happening during the past month is very helpful for us because we know that we are in a safe place, that also we are not talking about the processes or the task or the responsibilities. At the end of the day, we have this space to be vulnerable a little bit, to talk about, the different things that are affecting us and other things that we can celebrate because, you know, we obtain good results. So, now that we have the opportunity to include that in our day to day, it's super important for us, and we can see the changes that we have had in the communication. With the entire team.
Can you kind of paint a picture of maybe a specific scenario or situation that happened over the past year and how the retrospective was part of that?
Okay, we have had a lot of changes during the past year. So one of those is like we change our project management platform, and that process and that change was very, very, difficult for the company. And having these spaces, these retrospectives, we somehow we feel that we could communicate how we were feeling in front of that and more about the process, because obviously we were having the operation, meetings just to understand how we could make this process a little bit smoother and easier for everyone. But having these spaces to communicate our frustration, the things that we consider that, I mean, because at some point we were like, we can't with this anymore, and having those spaces, obviously with our moderator at that time, Dan, we feel the difference because it's not about just only, accumulate all that frustration, emotions, etc. So having the opportunity to communicate that at the same level, because in that space we have the managers and we have the rest of the team, so everyone is at the same level talking about the different things that they are feeling, that they are experiencing. So in terms of communication, that help us a lot, and also that space makes us feel more, secure in front of the rest of the team, and it's like, okay, I'm not alone feeling this, right? My other coworkers are they are feeling the same thing, but maybe in our day to day work we don't have the space to communicate or talk about those kind of things. So having that space has been super important for us.
And you've been with the organization for a while, so have you seen people kind of change or speak up more or contribute differently, once they started participating in the retrospectives?
Yes, totally. Because as I said, we can feel that we have like a safe space to talk in those retrospective, and that we can be vulnerable a little bit, so, or not a little bit, in a important way. So obviously we can translate that to the day-to-day communication that we have with the team. So it's not
Mhm.
just about that we are going to wait just 1 month to have retrospective and communicate all what we are feeling. I think that doing that during the retrospective allow us to do it, in different spaces as well. So, but part of that is that we can do that in the retrospectives.
And I actually don't think there's been a single retrospective where the actual business leaders were in it. I think it's always been focused on the, individual contributors in the middle management. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And why do you think that's the case? What benefit has it been not having the top two leaders as a part of these retrospectives?
I think that it's super important because the team, the whole team can feel like a little bit more, relaxed to talk about the different things. And it's more about like a space where everyone can share how they are feeling, not about, uh, and it's not all about the, let's say, to the work level. It's
Mm-hmm.
also about how you are feeling as a human being in front of the different work situations that you have to experience day to day, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, it's like you feel that it's not because the management team or the corporate team, that they are going to judge us or something like that, but it's somehow you feel like a little bit more comfortable doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And you feel that you can communicate everything with the rest of the team, with your coworkers.
Yeah. So I got a question from the audience. Curious, are you using any internal communications platform right now? So, is there any way that you're, communicating with team members internally outside of the retrospective?
Um, we have, okay, we use Zoom
Mm-hmm.
to, basically we use the Zoom chat for everything, and also we have two internal meetings, but it's not about to talk about, the maybe the blockers or things like that we are experiencing. It's more about to talk about the different tasks, the different projects. It's more about to check in during the week two times. So we do that. So
Mm-hmm.
also we ensure to maintain the communication, with the whole team during those spaces. And also we have like a coffee time. We are trying to do that weekly. And we have the rule that in that coffee time, we're not talk about anything related to work. It's just like kind of space that we talk about, our personal life and jokes, and we have fun in that
Mm-hmm.
space, 30 minutes. But
Mm-hmm.
that's part as well of that communication that we have internally.
That's great, and I'm glad that the coffee time is still happening.
Mhm.
Um, there
Yeah.
was a follow-up question to that is kind of how big is the organization? And I know that because you have a blend of like flex talent, you've got, primary employees, you got leadership, you got, a guy like me who, participates quite a bit. What would you say is kind of the rough head count at Covalent Bonds right now?
I think that at this moment we are 10 in the company. Something that is important to highlight here is that we are 100% remote company. So
Mm-hmm.
actually, I live in Colombia, but the rest of the team, they live in USA, Costa Rica,
New Zealand.
India, New Zealand. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, I want to keep going with the show, but is there any other types of kind of notes or pearls of wisdom about retrospectives that you want to share with everyone here today?
No, I just want to say that I recommend 100% the retrospectives. I consider that is a super important space that you can have with your team, because you can literally make a retrospective about all the things, not only the positive ones, only the negative one, just to make sure that all the team is aligned, that you have that space to talk about all those blockers or all those emotions, feelings, situations. And it's important to have that space to do that, because if you don't have that space, those things are going to be, accumulating and accumulating. And at the end of the day, it's not going to be good for anyone. So I recommend that because it's an space, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 1 hour monthly. It's, nothing in comparison to, not continue with the different regular tasks without having those spaces.
Yeah. And I think it's really critical also, like you said, 100% virtual remote. You can't just walk over to someone's desk and say, that thing you said ticked me off. Like it just can't happen. So
E-
you have to be intentional
mhm.
about creating these spaces.
Exactly. Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here and joining us. So everyone give your virtual Zoom round of applause. Um, Stephanie's fantastic people, and I'm so glad that she was here to join us. And if you
Thank you
want
for the
to
invite.
ask her about retrospectives further, or just marketing in general, her email stephanie@covalentbonds.com. I think Steph's great. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to keep going, and feel free to stick around if you'd like, because I want to now transition into how do we tweak those core business rituals and really make them specific and germane to agencies. And a lot of about what I'm going to cover, while I am positioning it as an agency thing, it's going to be applicable to anyone who has regular processes and has to communicate with people on a regular basis. So let's go back to that pre-mortem. Remember that? What could go wrong having an after work party? A lot of things go wrong. But when you start thinking about the business rituals at an agency, there's a few tweaks you can make to make it a little bit more effective. The first is shifting the focus from project failure to service quality failure. And the reason is this, is that a lot of marketing agencies are providing services on a regular basis. And so the time the campaign fails, it's renewal time. And at that point, like not really much you can do by then if you really, bobbled it. So instead of looking at like, what if this, customer churns, it starts saying, what if our customer satisfaction scores take a dip? What if 3 months from now, we are behind on all our deliverables? What could have happened that made all of our deliverables behind? Or if you're, producing leads for a business, what if we promise X, but we actually don't even get close to that? And so shifting the focus towards these service quality failures allows you to be a little bit faster, a little bit more agile in kind of addressing and preventing these. You can also, kind of like part of this is identify process-based risk, especially around producing deliverables. Hey, Brian, welcome. We're talking about pre-mortems. Hey, I'm going to mute you. Okay, is identify process-based risks. Things like team burnout, scope creep, changes in client expectations. What if 3 months from now, your frontline staff are completely burned out? What could have caused that? This type of thinking will allow you to get ahead of those types of problems and allow you to be more effective around, um, solving those issues or preventing them in the first place. The third is develop preventative measures to common risks. Okay, if you're going to be having to churn out high quality results on a regular basis, create some standard operating procedures or SOPs around maybe communication or workload management or having regular client check-ins. This is just good business sense. But when you think about, hey, this client is not giving us the information that we need, let's just imagine they won't. Let's imagine that clients are our worst enemy. Could it be because of how they communicate? Well, if you have some clients communicating with you over email, some clients texting you updates, some clients going into your project management system and leaving comments, you have all these different channels. well, how could we maybe onboard clients more effectively so that we groom them to communicate in a way that's best for both of us? Now you have a client onboarding SOP in terms of communication. Great. Getting those problems out of the way. Now, if you're going to steal something that I would recommend around pre-mortems is doing QBRs. Does anyone here know what QBRs stands for? You can drop it in the chat or you can unmute and say, I know what a QBR is. Anyone know what when I say QBR? Full impact workshop. Got it. So QBRs.
I put it in the
Quarterly.
chat.
There it is. Hey, Tammy. Oh, Tammy, gold star. Allison, gold star. Thank you. Thank you for shouting that out. So yes, quarterly business reviews. We're all talking about the same thing. And why these things matter, why you want to do it is it reminds clients that you exist. It reminds them that you're doing good work. And it allows you to get ahead of any problems. So thinking about this pre-mortem, if you can get ahead of problems with a client, way better. They love work. No one likes a surprise problem. So how to do it? It does not need to be complicated. It could be actually quite simple. Imagine a simple deck, Google Slides, PowerPoint, whatever. Build it during client onboarding. Get their buy-in. This is what your QBRs are going to be about. And in it, show the previous quarter's performance at a really high level. Put in there a victory lap. Give them a reason why you are doing great work or something really cool that you discovered, or just showcasing the value that you are delivering. Ask for feedback in the QBR. Give them a chance to be a part of the solution, and send written follow-up with their feedback and decisions that were made. This gets ahead of problems, it gets buy-in, and it creates a paper trail so that if 3 months from now they said, wait, why are we doing this different strategy? You go back the QBRs and say, well, during the spring QBR, you agreed this was going to be the strategy, and this is what you said. Boom. That's why. So this QBR, something you can adopt for any business, but if you're an agency, this is a really easy SOP to include in just your client management. All right, next, retrospectives. So they're good, right? Steph talked about how great they are. So there's some tweaks you can make for agencies specifically. As we described, doing them every month. And I find the month to be the sweet spot here. If you do it every week, it kind of feel like you're discussing last week's news. You're a little bit too close to the action. If you wait till the quarter, you really are slowing your pace of change and you're not as agile. So every month, it's an easy business ritual and it doesn't take too much time. Like it could be an hour a month. Would an hour a month make business better? Probably. If you can, cycle in client-centric evaluations alongside internal team performance. Give the team some data so that they're not just coming in with their feelings, but they're coming in with evidence of how the last month went. And if you are doing QBRs, this is a great place where you can pull in a QBR and add maybe the high-level takeaways to your monthly retrospective. And finally, there's a lot going on in an agency. Like everyone's wearing a million hats. Time is short. Time is money. And while it may feel good to get into a meeting and just vent, if you can't actually make change, then you're really wasting everyone's time. But if you try and bite off more than you can chew, you're also wasting your time and probably eating time away. So I like to prioritize within these types of retrospectives is what can be done before the next retrospective. How can we come back a month from now and talk about what change to make? And some changes are going to be bigger than a month. That's good. That's good. That's the whole point of the retrospective. But then identify what steps can we take to turn this into a full project. If, like Steph had described, you're going to be transitioning to a new project management platform, that's not something you're going to change in a month. And if it is, good luck. Good luck. There's plenty of people on Upwork to help you with that change. But maybe you could say, let's set up the project plan for doing this transition. What specific solution can we come back a month from now and say, great, we'll put that in action. Now, the thing, again, I want to give you silver bullets. I want to give you things you can walk away and put into action right away. Client health scores. That's something in a retrospective that is going to be super duper easy. And again, if you're doing the QBRs, then you're basically there. What it is a simple, very simple, again, focus on simple, rubric that identifies if a client is at risk, healthy, or thriving. Look at all the whole spectrum here. And why it matters, it gets everyone bought into what's going on with every client. At an agency, it is everyone's job to make a renewal happen. Whether you are on the back office doing creative work, whether you're working directly with a client, whether you're grooming all the operations of systems, is that the focus on the client needs to be maintained. And having client health scores as part of your regular retrospectives is going to make sure that the client focus stays top of mind. And in fact, it gets people connected to everything that's going on, to realize, oh, the creative team, we're making this new blog post, but the SAO team is doing a completely different strategy. Ruh-roh, maybe we should get together and align our strategies for this particular client or this particular campaign. There's two kind of easy ways to get this into action. The high-tech one, which is using your CRM, plenty of great tools out there, set a custom property and add it to your renewal dashboard. So for example, if you're in HubSpot, you set up the custom property. It could be a simple, drop-down box, and you can set up your internal criteria of what it means if someone's at risk, it's healthy or thriving based on your business. And then it's part of your systems, part of your reports. It's, something that flags to senior leadership that something's going on. So that's high tech. Low tech, create a spreadsheet. Just make a spreadsheet. Update it after every retrospective or QBR. And so that at the retrospective, you just pull out that spreadsheet. We've got 3 reds, 10 greens, and 2 yellows. What does that mean? Well, last month we were 10 reds, so things are getting better here, guys. So this type of small tweak can have a big impact on an agency and their growth potential. Okay. I've talked enough. Now it's time for some therapy. I'm going to let you talk now. And so for those of you who are, answering emails or eating soup out of a mug, this is the time to get ready to participate, because we are going to be doing some breakout rooms. And for this, what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to send you to some breakout groups, and I'm not going to include the co-hosts here. And what I'd like you to do is just talk about, just let it go. Talk about any examples of communication breakdowns at your current or former organization, up to you. And in that conversation, then ask, how could a pre-mortem or retrospective have helped prevent or fix that problem? So, as a reminder, I'm going to send you to a breakout group. Just talk about whatever problems you've seen with communication. And then say, if we did a pre-mortem or if we did a retrospective, how might that narrative have gone differently? Or how might we have recovered more effectively? I'm going to give you about 7 minutes for this, and then we're going to come back and have a little chit chat. So let me just make sure that all these rooms are balanced. Great. I'm going to open all the rooms. And if you go to a room and nobody's there after a minute or two, come on back here and I'll talk to you. Okay. So open up the rooms, have fun. I'll be here. Enjoy the conversation. I'll see you in about 10 minutes. So thank you all for coming back. None of you stayed in the breakout rooms, which is good, considering that they are closed. So it'd be weird if you got stuck there. But I want to open the floor and let people contribute. What communication breakdowns did you discuss, and how might a pre-mortem or retrospective have changed that narrative? Anyone want to go for it?
I'll go.
All right, go for it.
So Brian and I were talking, and I was explaining that I'm kind of the one person marketing agency within my organization. And I've been having some challenges with people who are senior to me not getting me content on time. They're not, so that's a little tricky politically, but I think this whole pre-mortem concept could really help. And I'm going to implement that at my next meeting, just to say, okay, if we don't get our deliverables to me on time, what could happen? And then we'll take it from there so that, you know, they can come up with, okay, yeah, if I don't get this to her on time, this is gonna cause problems and here's how.
Definitely, definitely. And there's like a little secret benefit with the pre-mortem is that because nothing bad has happened yet, that
Right.
means the emotions are a lot lessened,
Mhm.
and the power in the room is different. Is that a very junior employee could identify a very real risk that no one else had seen, and really helps an organization almost innovate faster by preempting those types of issues. Cool. Thank you, Tammy. Anyone else want to share something that came up in their conversation? Just feel free to unmute and shout because this is a small, intimate group.
I'll mention a few things. We were
Okay.
talking about the challenge of remotely based companies, where the company's either 100% remote or you have most of the employees in another part of the world. And that sometimes turns into cultural barriers, cultural differences. You know, I worked for a company in Central Europe a number of years ago, and the communication wasn't that difficult, but the trust level was very difficult to manage. You know, there was I hate to say a mistrust, but you know, if you're not from this was a company where 90% of the employees came from one country in Europe, and the rest of us were all satellite. And there was just definite, you know, you were a second class citizen, you know, if you weren't from the host country, and that's a tough one to deal with. They never dealt with it, by the way. Um, so that made life difficult. And I worked for a smaller technology company last time around, and there was only about 20 employees, but I found that they were all kind of islands of automation. You know, no one knew what the other person was doing for a living. They didn't really have any depth. So I started interviewing people in other departments and putting interviews in video and in print, you know, through an e-newsletter just to get people on the same page, which led me to, that's why I'm kind of becoming a big believer in a internal communications platform. I think that solves a lot of problems because it allows you to at least reach everywhere and everyone, even if they're deskless.
Yeah. And I think you hit on an important cultural note here is that when you look at an organization, it's made of tribes, it's made of circles, it's made of workflows, and people tend to stick to their tribe and they tend to think about their tribe or they think about their project or their team. And by, you know, it's just natural human inclination, just focus on the thing that's ahead of you. But by zooming out, both of these techniques are coming together moments. You get people around the same table, sharing information, getting to know each other, seeing how you communicate. There's all these follow-on effects that you start to trust each other more. You start to understand where people are coming from more when you're meeting every month and they're venting about the same issue. You're like, wow, that's a big issue for you. And allows you to be a little more sensitive, a little more emotionally intelligent in how you work with them.
Trust, though, takes time to build. And
Yep.
unfortunately, companies are moving so fast today. I'm not sure they're paying enough attention to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I know that we got about 5 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we have a little bit of time to do Q&A, and I have a treat. I have a giveaway. But before you get your treat, I just want to open the door and say, who has any follow-up questions or clarifications on the topics that we covered today? The retrospectives, the pre-mortems, the QBRs, the client health scores, covalent bonds being a cool place to work, like anything that you have any questions about.
I have one. Your solutions, are they for any size company, you know, or do they vary depending on the size of the company and how many people?
Yeah, so all the suggestions that I provided earlier, so all of these can be scaled up or scaled down in different types of organizations. Client health scores at any business, it is very easy for people who are not facing a client to care about the client. And if you can find ways of bringing the client into your internal conversations, you keep the focus on the customer. Talking about, you know, these retrospectives, these are for process-based types of businesses, but even still, every business has processes. So having a retrospective that looks at CSAT scores if they dip below a certain marker, that's a really good thing to get ahead of. QBRs, I mean, some businesses, this is just part of the job expectations for certain roles. It's not necessarily specific to agencies. And if you are a solopreneur like myself, I do my own QBRs for myself and I have to present it to myself. So they could really work at any organization, any size.
I think it was Tammy that was mentioning she was having trouble getting content from the senior team. How do you get the highest levels of management to care about and get involved with internal communication?
Well, that'll be in my next workshop talking about
Okay.
managing up. I mean, there's a lot of nuance in communicating up and down chains and how you present information, how do you get people to the same table? And, Tammy had brought up a good point is you can use the pre-mortem approach to then talk about a topic that may be difficult for a senior leader to hear. And if you get ahead of the problems, that's a great technique to get buy-in and saying like, well, I am trying to plan for all scenarios. What if it goes poorly? What if it goes well? What if it goes exceedingly well? What happens if we win all the business we're pitching for? Are we prepared to scale up? Are we prepared to pivot? These are the types of conversations to have in advance so that you can kind of place your bets where you think most likely to happen. So yeah, that's the next workshop. Okay, 2 minutes left. I want to absolutely thank AMA for hosting this, for giving me the opportunity to speak to all of you. This is before I give the giveaway. You still stick around. So I want to see, Emily, if you wanted to say anything about the AMA group, the chapter, what's going on. I know there's a a holiday party coming up.
Yeah, Dan, you are incredible and amazing, and we can't thank you enough. If people don't know, Dan and I have been chatting for quite a while, and he's been such a great resource and advocate for AMA Boston. So again, we appreciate this conversation. But quickly about AMA Boston, my name's Emily. I'm the president of AMA Boston. I'll put my contact information in the chat. But AMA Boston is just really a marketing nonprofit here to provide educational and networking opportunities such as this. And so check out our Eventbrite, our website for all the updated events happening in the next few weeks. We have a lot going on, but as Dan said, join us for the holiday party. That one I'm most excited for because I think Santa may be stopping by. So thanks to everyone for joining, and Dan, over to you.
Okay. So I want to thank again all of you for sticking around to the end. So here's your little giveaway. I have a whole ebook on communication. It's about unearthing back channel conversations, how to hold one-on-ones, creating a feedback culture, even a whole section on communicating with introverts, which I know that a lot of leaders sometimes struggle with, is how do I get the quiet person at the table to be a part of the conversation, whether it's with these retrospectives. Pre-mortems are such a great way of getting introverts involved because, again, it de-risks it. It makes it so less emotionally charged. So you can download that at the link here, go.learntoscale.us/better agency communication. But I will also drop it here in the chat so that you can just click a link rather than type it up. And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed today. I enjoyed it. So, I mean, I hope you enjoyed it, but I enjoyed it. So I write down in my Dear Diary that I had a great time. I want to thank AMA for giving me this opportunity to share this and, talk about communication. Again, my email's there. Feel free to reach out to me if you love this, hated this, or wanted to learn more. And there's the link to that ebook around communication. So thank you all for coming.